Yeah, one man, one mission, and message that God has chosen to be about the Father's business. Welcome to Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders. I'm your host, Aaron Williams, behind the Ivory Kingdom Builders microphone. Let's go forth with grace, love, and fire. Welcome to Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders. What's on my mind? What's on my heart? Well, first of all, this notion of being shocked, this notion of being, I can't believe this is America. It's always been America. This what we seeing going on in the nation today has always been America. It's been America since our founding. It's been America since we came to these shores long years ago. And so when people say they're in shock, and when they see people say they can't believe this is America, I'm always asking the question like, what America do you live in? What America are you talking about that you can't believe? We live in an era of sinful silence, where silence is sinful. We're so blessed, we're so rich, we're so fortunate that we don't really understand or have a desire to understand the country, what it means, what it does, and the effect it has on people. And so when things like the Supreme Court decision, Hawaii versus Trump, comes down, you go to the news and you see the tweets and you see the Facebook that everybody's in shock and everybody's in awe and everybody can't believe this and this is not America, when it very much is America. The Supreme Court that made this decision has rendered terrible decisions, tragic decisions, evil decisions throughout its history of being a Supreme Court. And we can go through some of the cases. But we must speak up and quit being silent and quit being shocked and quit being awe when we do what we always done, which make evil, tragic decision that oppresses people, enslave people, all manner of things. When you look throughout history, this is what we always done. This is no better America. This is no better angels of our nature. This is the nature of America, to do tragic, evil, torturous, abominable things to people who God says, from a kingdom's perspective, is the least of these among us. Legal does not mean moral. Legal does not mean moral. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's moral, and it squares with the code of God. So therefore, if it's immoral, we have a duty to disobey that illegal act. Slavery was legal. Segregation was legal. The Indian Removal Act was legal. Women not having the right to vote was legal. And yet all of these things were overturned. Why? Because people stood up, spoke out, rebelled, marched, boycotted, did it all to say no. In some cases, we went to war where hundreds of thousands died because something that was legal but immoral was brung down. So when we hide behind legality, we hide behind a slippery slope that humans come up with, because all laws, there are two types of laws. There's just laws and unjust laws. And we're not bound under God from a kingdom perspective to follow and obey unjust laws. Unjust laws tears families away, children away from their families. This is an unjust law. So therefore, we must rebuke that. And the Supreme Court in Hawaii versus Trump just recently said that they're going to ban Muslims from this country, from certain countries, from the country, hiding behind national security. And that's what we do in the country. Will hide behind national security. So what are they doing? They hide behind law and order because we are so fearful. They hide behind law and order because they scare you to believe that the Muslims are coming. The Muslims are coming. It's not the Russians anymore. The Muslims are coming. The Muslims are coming. And so you must hide the women, hide the children, hide the babies because the Muslims are coming. The Muslims are coming. But no, I can tell you the Muslims are not the one that's shooting up the schools. The Muslims are not the ones slaughtering our kids in our schools across the nation. The Muslims are not the one that are shooting down young black men and young black boys and men on the streets of America. The Muslims are not doing that. It is the people, the white supremacists upheld by white supremacists that's doing it. The alt-right people, the white supremacists emboldened by their fearless leader that's in the White House. Yes, we have a white supremacist in the White House. He is a racist and so forth. They're emboldened by him. So it's not the Muslims that's doing this. It's our own people who are doing this. But you've been scared to believe. You've been tricked. You've been hoodwinked. You've been lied to believe that you need to fear the Muslims. And so we in America, we must understand history and understand that the Supreme Court in 1857 told Dred Scott that you can't even bring your case before the court because you're not even an American citizen. So you're running from, because you're a slave, we will not even hear your case. See, this is nothing new. And Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, they said, you know what, school it's separate but equal. We're going to separate you, but we're going to have equal facility, which we know was a lie. They always hide behind the fear of law and order because they want to keep scaring the hell out of you, so you'll submit to those laws and not question those laws and not do any critical thinking, because this is what America always done. And then you sit around and we sit around, we're in shock and awe when they're doing something they're always done. If you've been black for 52 years, or you've been white for 52 years, if you've been Caucasian for 52 years, or Hispanic for 52 years, on your 53rd birthday, you shouldn't wake up and say you're in shock and awe when you look at the races you've been for 53 some years. Well, that's what we do when dealing with these unjust laws that come down from this country. Segregation was unjust. Yet when Brown versus Board of Education came and obliterated, overturned Plessy versus Ferguson, the South didn't even follow the law of the Supreme Court. So there's always just and unjust law. And so we need to understand America, who we so surprised when they do things like that, they slaughter the indigenous people, the Native Americans. This America that you're so shocked and awed about, they enslaved the African Americans. They had the Chinese build the railroads. They used counter intel pro to terrorize and to listen to private conversation of black leaders in liberation movement. They interned Japanese into internment camps. Right now, Michelle Alexander wrote a brilliant book called The New Jim Crow. Mass incarceration happens every day, stripping African Americans and people of color from their families for non-violent crimes, put them in prison for years and years in this American justice system. So when we're discussing there about separating families, we need to understand what the founders intended, and quit saying the conditioned thing that you was intended to say, which is this country was founded on with the premise that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by the Creator. That's a condition that you was told to say in school. You've been conditioned to believe that his founders, even though they had some issues, they had great ideas. No, they didn't. What the founders intended and what they did is they intended slavery to be a part of the rule of law. They intended for African Americans enslaved to be illiterate. They intended to take the land from the Native Americans with the Indian Removal Act. They intended for women not to have the right to vote because they were subservient and they was less than a man. They intended all this that they intended, and they did it on purpose. It is no revelation. Now you can't change history and now make them deitize them when they intended all the hell, the torture, the tragedy, the enslavement, the taking of Native Americans, the killing of the Native Americans, the abuse, the removal. Now you can't change and say what they intended. You got to look at what they did intend and what they did, and what they did do was terrible. And so the reason why we can't win the young people, what's really on my heart today is why we can't win the young people today. You know why we can't win the young people today? You know why the young people are not listening to us? Because they're hungering and thirsting. They're hungering and thirsting for knowledge. They're hungering and thirsting for knowledge that's practical and that's real. And if you want to come to them with this slave holding God, this slave holding religion, this slave making doctrine, this slave making educational philosophy, this slave making religion, they don't have no time for you, because they know that that's no word. They understand and know that that's a lie, because they know this. When you're talking about God and when you're saying God, and yet you just had a Supreme Court and you have a president who's running around disrespected everybody under the sound of his voice. And you got a Supreme Court now codifying what he said into law, codifying racism into law, and they know it's evil. See, the young folks know this. Evil tears families apart. Evil creates condition of impoverishment. Evil looks at human beings as dogs in cages. Evil murders innocent and hide behind the laws of the land. Evil enslaves. Evil mass incarcerate. Evil displaces. Evil creates war for profit. So these young people, when you condone evil, when you're sinfully silent, when evil is taking place, they don't have time to hear what you say. I'm a witness. I deal with young people every day, and they don't have time for it. So we need to understand that the time for calling is over. We don't have time to call them. That's not my ministry, because for every child that's separated, every child that's trapped in this abuse, every child that's trapped in this lies, need to understand there are people, there's a remnant that look at life through a kingdom perspective, and they're going to stand up for justice. They're going to stand up for truth. They're going to stand up for human rights. See, human rights is what we focus on at Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders, because human rights are derived from God. Human rights come from my Creator. Human rights, I don't have to go begging for my human rights through some kind of civil rights, because civil rights depend on the rogue state or the rogue nation that gives them. See, but my human rights are derived from God. My human rights are derived from the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So therefore, we must always fight. We must always stand. We must always be on the right side of history. And you will always find yourself on the right side of history if you standing for the oppressed. You're standing for the brokenhearted. You're standing for the imprisoned. You're standing for the sick. You're standing for the outcast. You're standing for the downtrodden. You're standing for the person that this nation says is from the wrong side of the tracks. Because, see, our kids are not listening to us. The young folks are not listening to it, because they understand this by our action, that we're not willing to die for them. See, when we're willing to die for our children, standing up for them like our ancestors stood up and died for us. See, I understand why I can go and get on the bus where I want to. I understand why I can go and teach at an integrated school. I understand why I can go and do basically and say what I say right now. Not because no First Amendment said it, because the First Amendment said it way back in 1787. Not because of no Bill of Rights, because when the Bill of Rights passed, my ancestors would say, I can say it, I can go on the bus where I want to go, I can express my right, because people was willing to die, sacrifice, and give their life for me to have the right. We are their hope, and we must not be silent now that we're on the other side and say, well, the nation's going to take care of itself. No, it's not going to take care of itself. We must speak out. We must not be silent, because there's a sinfulness in silence. And so what's on my heart is we must tell the Supreme Court, tell Donald Trump, that we reject your unjust law. We reject your unjust ways. God is going to hold you accountable, and history is going to be your judge. Just like Dred Scott versus Sanford, just like Plessy versus Ferguson, you will go down in history's graveyard of lies. That's what's on my heart. Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders will continue right after this with my special guest, Minister Anthony Dargan, coming up. Stay with us. the sounds of Mr. Joaquin Carew. Welcome back to Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders. Well, I'm excited about my next guest, my long-term friend, Minister Anthony Dargan. Been knowing him since 1993. We raised our kids together, lived in a small town together, and I'm certainly excited for you to hear this interview because you'll hear a great man talking about his life, his perspective on life, things he's been through in life, and we're just going to sit down and have a nice conversation. So sit back and relax and enjoy this great interview with my friend, Minister Anthony Dargan. All right, I'm here with my good friend, my long-term friend, Minister Anthony Dargan, and we're going to have a conversation. Truly excited about this interview. This is my long-term friend. I want to start the interview off with on a personal note. This is a man that I love. This is a man that I want to tell a story about, and I didn't prep him about this before I start the interview. When 1993, when I came to Beeville, Texas, I didn't know nobody, and I was in a situation in my life that I was starting a new job and a new career. And I went to a church service, and we met at that church service, and we immediately connected. And I needed to take care of a situation. To get a job, I needed to take care of a financial situation. This is a man that didn't know me. We had just met. We had just connected up. And I'm not going to say the dollar amount, but he, out of goodness heart, he gave me money. I ain't talking about just a handshake or bought me a meal. He gave me money. He didn't even know me. And that's always moved me. I've always been just humbled by that, because he has a beautiful heart and a beautiful spirit, and I've always been thankful for him for doing that for me, even though sometimes I didn't know how to articulate or to tell him. I want to tell the audience now that I want you to listen to him and hear what he's got to say. He's a special person in my life, in my family's life, and I've been knowing him. He's my best friend as an adult for almost going on 25 plus years, right under 25 years. So this is Minister Anthony Dargan. So we're going to start off with you talking about Temple, Texas. Temple. We're going to go back to Temple because I know he's going to tell you how he got out of Temple as soon as he could. He tells me that all the time. So just tell us about Temple and growing up in Temple with your brothers and your mother.
Yeah, we moved to Temple when I was in the 8th grade. Really didn't like Temple. Did my 4 years in high school. Left Temple as quick as I could. Joined the Navy. Didn't look back. Still go back to Temple because my family's there. I got a brother there. My mother's still there. Mm-hmm. But it's nothing bad about Temple. I just needed to get somewhere to start my life. Right. Growing up in Temple really didn't have a lot of friends. I just grew up with mainly one friend from playing basketball. And he was a year ahead of me, and once he graduated, I kind of just stayed to myself my last year before going into the Navy, and kept to myself. But nothing really negative to say about Temple. Just wasn't a place for me that I wanted to make my life. I needed to be somewhere else.
Now y'all that moved I remember now that I think about y'all that moved from North Carolina, right? You was somewhere in the South, right? East Coast.
we stayed in North Carolina when my mother was married to my stepfather, and then he passed away at age 31, and then we moved back to Texas. We moved to Cameron, Texas first, and went to school there. And like I said, in the 8th grade, we moved to Temple. Needed to get somewhere where my mother could get a better job and take care of these 5 knuckleheads that she had with us.
Now talk about your grandmother. I know you got great stories about your grandmother. You just have me laughing about your grandmother. What influence did she have on your life? Was she in Temple or in?
My grandmother was in Cameron.
Okay, all right.
Grandmother was mean, set in the old ways. Yeah. She saw things one way, and the way she seen it is the way you did it. She wasn't really just. When I say mean, not really just not being abusive. I'm just talking about being direct. Right. Saw life in the way she grew up. You got to remember, she grew up way before we did. Right. And that's how she was. Saw it one way, and that's the way you did it. Mm-hmm.
Now you have 4 brothers, right?
Yes.
And you're where you fall?
I'm the second oldest.
Okay. And how's y'all relationship? younger and going to now? How relationship with your brothers?
You know, when I left and went to the Navy, kind of separated for a few years there, about 5 years. And then when I got back to Texas, me and my brother started getting together, and we not where we should be as brothers, but we're a lot better than we were 20 years ago.
Amen. That's good. That's good. When we come back, the interview with Dargan continues as he discusses his naval career and his wife, his marriage. Stay with us. Be right back. Without you, I fade out. Without strength, without love, I lose sense, I lose sight. Without you, without light, what would I do without you? What would I do without your love? What could I be without you? Nothing, 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 nothing. I lose hope, without lust, without clothes. I lose health, I lose skills. Without you, I lose will. What would I do without you? What would I do without your love? What could I be without you? Nothing, nothing, nothing.
Years. I just needed to get some experience in something so I could gain me a career. But the Navy did teach me a lot about discipline. That's one thing I will say the military does, is it teach you a lot about discipline. And I fought it in the beginning, but I credit everything that where I'm at today, how I got into the prison system is because of the Navy and what I learned from the Navy, and that was my beginning of being a man, growing up and learning how to be growing up without a father. Like I said, my father passed away when I was very young, and my mother never remarried again. So it's just grew up being taught by my mother, which she did the best she could do, but there was a lot of things she couldn't do because she's not a man, and I had to learn on the fly. Well, when I was challenged in the Navy by different supervisors and different men in the beginning, it was hard for me because I didn't like being told what to do, which is really, in reality, you really told every day what to do by someone. That's the way you learn. That's how you gain experience. So I enjoyed the 8 years that I was there, but I knew that that wasn't the career that I wanted. I needed to find out what I was searching for, and I ended up being in the prison system, working in the electronic field, in which I wanted to do.
Now you learned your trade, and the Navy gave you your trade, the electronic field. That's where you became. But you always started. You kind of like struck to that, right? You start off as an electrician in the Navy.
Yes, I started off in the machine shop down in the Ballers. I realized quick that wasn't for me. That was not for me. All that nastiness, dirty. I wasn't that type of worker. I needed something where I could use my mind more, and the electronic field is where I wanted to get.
Right. Now, you've been married over 25 plus years now. I've heard, I want the audience here, I've heard the great stories about how you met, her name is Zona Monique Dargan, in your white suit, but tell us all the real story, how you met. You was at the club, or what?
Well, actually, I had went down with a good friend. We still friends today. That he's from Fort Myers, Florida, and he grew up with my wife's sister. And we just happened to be standing outside one of his partner's house, and my wife's sister and her drove up, and he stopped them, and he scheduled for us to go out that night, and that was the beginning of our relationship, which turned into marriage, and almost 31 years later, and we still together.
Amen. Amen. So, talk about your marriage. You obviously have ups and downs and things like that. What is the biggest challenge in marriage? Because you was in the military when y'all first met, and then moving into civilian field. What's one of the biggest challenges you had to deal with in your marriage?
My biggest challenge was myself. My biggest challenge was wanting to always be in control. Controlling not only myself, but controlling my wife also. And anger. That was a big challenge in the beginning of my marriage, which had a lot of turmoil come with it, caused us to go through a lot of different things that some was necessary, but a lot of it was caused by our own trials and troubles that we just tried to fix it ourselves, mainly me. And it went from myself. It got into the 3 daughters that we got from the marriage. And the biggest thing for me was being in control.
Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders continues right after this. Dargan come back, and he talks about his daughters, breaks them down one by one, and then we'll get a discussion about his life working in a prison, nearly 30 years. You don't want to miss it. Courtney, Jasmine, and Lexus. Talk about them individually, how what they mean to you and how they different they are in the individual, and they're young women now and doing their own thing. But talk about raising them and being a father to them on an individual level.
Courtney, the oldest, she's more family oriented. She loves being around family. If it was up to her, Courtney probably would live with us the rest of her life, with the children and her husband. She like being close knit with family. She don't like long distance. She don't believe that family should be in different states. She believes that family should be next door each other, where you can reach out and reach in the window and touch each other. That's just that's what she believes in her heart. That's what she likes. She believes that grandparents should be around the grandchildren, not taking care of them. She just believes that that your grandchildren should be able to enjoy their grandparents growing up. So it just don't. So when the parents, as the children get older, and the parents probably grandparents been deceased, that it just don't be a memory, that they actually had experience with their grandparents,
right,
and with their significant other, and with their brothers and their sisters and their aunts. That's what Courtney believes. I'll go to the next one, which is my youngest, Alexis. She more of a keep to yourself type of daughter. She's not really emotional. She believes working hard to get what you're searching for. She believes in working for it. She don't look for handouts. She loves school. She graduated with a bachelor's. She's her own woman, but she does one day want to get married and have children. She's the only one right now that we don't have any grandchildren from, but she's the one that probably will be more of a success because of her own independability, how she is. She's dependable on herself. She relies on no one else. but she also is family oriented, just not as tight as Courtney. But she does recognize and does realize that she has a mother and has a father, and that she wants to always be in touch with them, talk to them, keep them close to her heart. The middle one, Jasmine, that's Anthony, just a girl.
Anthony part 2, huh?
Of all the ones, it's not really surprising that she more like me, because when she was born, right before she was born, I was convinced she was going to be a boy.
Yeah.
No one could tell me otherwise until she came out of the womb, and then I looked down and I said, well, she is a girl.
Yeah.
But she's more like her father than all of us. If you tell her you're going to do something, you got to keep your word. And that's the way I am. She's about honoring what she says she's going to do. A little hot-headed. Grew up the same way I did, with anger issues, but she is a giver. She'll give you her all. And that's one point about her, the difference between her and the other two. The other two is not as giving as she is, but she'll give you her all. And she loves her children, or do anything for them, but she don't like to be controlled either. And she's her own woman also. She can't stand school. She's the one that if she does go to school, it'd have to be something that lasts maybe 6 months and she's done and get what she gonna get out of it. But she's not the type that's gonna do 4 years and tolerate all that studying and none of that.
Right.
But she is, like Aaron said, she's Anthony number 2. Just in a girl form.
That's right. That's all right. We met in Beeville. Now, I know how I got to Beeville, and I got to prison. We can talk about the prison system. We don't want to name the prison because, we don't want to put no information out there because just keep it private for working in prison. But we're going to talk about the prison. But how did you get to Beeville? How did you get in between nowhere and goodbyes?
Well, I ended up in Beeville on my last couple of years in the Navy. I did all my time on the ship. We had a rotation of 5-2. That means 5 at sea and 2 on land. And when it came time, I wanted to get back to Texas, and Beeville was the only place I could get, and that's how I wound up in Beeville. But when I got to Beeville, I knew that I was going to do my last 2 years and then get out. And I met this brother that worked at the prison, and he told me to put in an application. I put in an application, went and got my interview, got hired, and been there ever since. Almost 30 years later, I'm still at the prison.
Wow. And they used at Chase Field at that time, Chase Field Naval Air Station.
Yes.
Which is subsequently shut down. But that's how you got to Beeville.
Yes.
And prison. Now let's talk about the prison. Working in a prison. I always tell people I was a correctional officer too. We used to work at the same prison together for my 3 years I was there. And I always tell people that the only difference between me and an inmate was I could leave every day after my shift. Talk about, if people got many, and stereotype movies display certain things about prison and things like that. Talk about, first, working in a prison, and also how you relate to inmates within that prison. Because I know you have details that work with you, inmates, and you develop a relationship with them. Tell people about how, kill some stereotypes about prison, what prison life and dealing with inmates is about.
You watch TV and you see as they show these guys, this criminals, and kill you on a dime and take your life and won't think twice about it. And don't get me wrong, there are some out there that will do that, but there are also some out there that realize they made a bad choice. This is where they at for making that choice, and that wants to do their time, get out, better their lives. There's some in there that do have families on the outside. When I'm talking about families, I'm talking about wife, children, that wants to get out and realize they made a mistake, or let's take that back, they made the wrong choice or doing whatever they did, and it caused them to be in that prison. And now they're away from their family, their daughters and their sons, not being around them, and especially the sons, and now the sons are being led to be the men of the family, not being taught by a man. And you can see that going on every day. That's one stereotype you see them bring as. Then you see a lot of them, they stereotype them as no education, stupid. But there's a lot of those guys in there that's very intelligent, very intelligent. And, you see them, they show the guards just always manhandling and being ordered, not talking to them. Well, I have guys that just over in the past 28 years I've talked to, and I've seen some get out, go do better. I've also seen some get out and come back in the years that I've been there. But don't believe everything that you see on TV. TV is right in some things, but TV also is wrong in a lot of things.
Do you believe some of the correctional officers and people, prisoner workers have judge these inmates? I know that one I've seen a lot of judgment, trying to actually they already been judged, obviously, and the system put them in. You think people that work out there, have you seen people out there have a judgmental attitude toward these inmates?
Oh yes, I've seen workers that think because they work there and they not locked up that they are better than the ones that are locked up. But sometimes you have some that's not locked up that go home every day. They worse than the ones that's in there. Some that will stab you in the back and don't think twice about it. Sometimes you get to the place where you got, I wouldn't say trust, but you will get to a place where you might feel more secure around the ones that you know where they mind at than the ones that you don't know where their mind is, and who can cover you and who will not. Because I mean, there's times where those guys will give you warnings about, hey, don't come to work this day, or don't go in this area this day, about something that's gonna happen. No, they're not gonna tell you who's gonna do it because they got the snitch law in there. But if you show respect, they will give respect back. And over the years that I've worked there, the biggest thing that these guys want to do, majority of them, they just want to do their time.
Yeah.
Because in reality, we're outnumbered.
Yes.
They can take the prison anytime they want to, but they don't because of the respect, and that most of them just want to do their time, get out, get back to their families, get back to their life, start their lives over, and be better off than what they are right now.
Right. I know we do a lot of studies. I teach criminal justice and things like that, and criminal justice major. And you look at all those empirical studies. What's the demographic breakdown as far as race? What is it? Because a lot of times we talk about how we definitely criminal justice reform because there's a lot of people of color. Tell us, what is the prison that you work? What's the demographic breakdown as far as race?
Well, because I'm in South Texas, of course, it's more Hispanic there than the white race and the black race. The white race especially is less there than any other race. Then you'll get some Asians once in a while, but heavily weighed Hispanic because we in San Antonio and we in South Texas.
Wow. Relationships. Talk about. I always tell people all the time. Some of the best conversations I've had in my life. Never wasn't friends. Obviously, wasn't friends because of the situation. But some of the best conversations I had when I was a correctional officer, I used to, an 8-hour shift. I would talk to inmates. Do you build that type of relationship that you actually talk to them about, and you get to know them in a personable way?
Yes.
Which you're not supposed to do, but it happens because we're all human beings.
Yes. You have to. I wouldn't say give them personal information, but you also have to allow them to see the human part of you.
Yeah.
That you're not perfect, that you're not there to share from all of the time. They go through trials and trouble just like everybody else. And sometimes they have things on their mind, and they'll get to the place where they gain trust in you, and they'll want to confide in you and get your opinion on something that's going on in their lives that they can't do nothing about because of where they are. But sometimes one or two words that you say to them give them hope that everything is going to be better on the outside, or they can talk to their wife or talk to their children and give them some advice. which is hard on them, especially on the young men today, because they during that time, and some of these young men that's out there that's living out in this rough world and not having a man figure in their life, sometimes they're not going to listen to that, because they, in their mind, they're like, how you going to tell me something and you locked up? And sometimes that's hard for them to deal with, knowing that, man, I'm here and this young teenage boy is my responsibility, and I'm not there to assist him and give him help. And especially with the daughters. I know us men try to put mostly the daughters on the mothers, but us men are a big influence on our daughters, on who they choose to be in their life, how they deal with when they get hurt by the male figure. And it's just hard for those guys to sit there knowing that they family going through something, and they in a place in their life where they really can't do nothing. Sometimes it takes more than words. Sometimes they need to see the physical part of you there.
Yes.
Showing that you got their back.
Bishop Presents Kingdom Bells continues, and Dargan close out the interview with his life work. What does he want to leave behind? What does he want to do for the kingdom of God? We'll be right back. Stay right there. You're in the ministry. We've been in the ministry together. As we close, what is your? I know you support the Core, and the Core is a marriage retreat that we both support, and that you are also within the Core. What is you and your wife? I know together y'all have a call of God on your life, and it's been there. And what is your life mission? What do you want to leave on this earth when you're through on this side? And you pass on, what do you want to leave as far as your legacy and your life work behind you?
You know, it's funny that you asked me that. When we got out of Core last year of 2017, I got what our ministry was going to be about, and I hadn't told you yet. Mm-hmm. But our ministry, we got the title of our ministry, which we haven't began yet, but it's beginning right now, probably right now as I'm speaking. It's called Destined Ministries.
Destined Ministries. Spell it.
Destined.
All right. You heard it live here on Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders, a new ministry, Destined Ministry. Amen. Tell us about it.
That's the title of the ministry. And what I want to focus on is soul.
Yeah. And
the meaning of that is strongholds. Haven't really figured out the O yet. Mm-hmm. But I've been thinking about it. But strongholds oppressing your life. Mm. That's what the ministry is going to focus on, is the strongholds. Because as you know, as life goes on, people get strongholds in their lives.
Yes.
Then sometimes it's just hard to let go of the stronghold, and you need someone else besides ourselves, someone with a higher calling than us to get you away from the stronghold. And that's what the ministry is focused on, is strongholds. That's our focus. That's what me and my wife is focused on. That's what we've been studying on. Mm-hmm. That's what we've been praying on. And that's what we're going to be presenting when it's time to come about.
So your vision is to go to other churches, go to other ministries, and present your ministry to other churches around the area and things like that?
Not just churches. We just want to be able to present it and talk to anybody that's going through a stronghold. And we're not just talking about drugs or anything. We're talking about anything that has a hold of you, and you know it's got a hold of you, and it's oppressing you, and it's stopping you from being who you need to be in your own self.
The full gamut of life, emotional, any kind of struggle, family, friend, any type of struggle that's pulling on you.
And I'll give you one example of it from my own experience. Like, and Aaron has seen this. He knows me very well. It's anger. Now, I can tell you anything and everything about anger because I dealt with it for a while. And I know what it's like to be oppressed by it and want to let go of it, but you can't because you still dealing with something that happened years ago. Even the past is a stronghold. People just deal with that. They had some trial happen. They had some tragedy happen, and they just cannot get free from it. And that's what the ministry is all about, being free of the stronghold and realizing that it is a stronghold and that it's going to take more than just reading about it or talking about it to someone. Sometimes it takes a higher being to get you free from it, where when you do get free from it, you'll be able to talk about it, discuss it, and it won't keep dragging you and pulling you back in the same place that you thought you got away from.
Right.
And that's what it's about. And it's like, and I'll spell it out. It's SOU with a little R beside it, and that stands for your, and then L. Life.
Right.
Strongholds oppressing your life.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, I'm truly excited about it. And breaking news here, and we got a new ministry coming. I'm definitely going to have you come back on and talk to us about it once it begins. And we definitely be praying with you on the ministry. And I appreciate this time. I appreciate it, what you shared with us. And as I said earlier, this is my good long-term friend, my life friend. And I thank God for you. And I'm sure the listeners going to really get something out of this. So I appreciate it. And God
Thank
bless
you.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
God bless you.
Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. Of my kingdom there is no end." Thank you for listening to Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders, a bi-weekly podcast, a grace, fire, and love show. Remember, God's elect, to always be about the Father's business, building the kingdom of God. Yeah.